You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV. Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that is the love for Green Bay football. Sean, so glad to be back after the bye. But before we get into this great game against the Chicago Bears, how about a word from our sponsor?
Yeah, the Bears, obviously, the Packers are going to be playing the Bears on the road, but this week, next week, maybe you could be back for a home game, and you can use Ticket King to get you going. Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, they've been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packer game tickets, go to PackersTalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. If you're following with us on the video today on YouTube, you can see the link right there on your screen, PackersTalk.com/tickets or theticketking.com. And hey, while you're on YouTube, while you're on Facebook, wherever you're at, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And feel free to chime in the comment section. We love hearing the commentary from what our listeners, what our viewers are thinking about the Packers. And it's a big week, Gil, coming forward, so I hope there's a lot of comments in the comment section coming up. Bears week.
Always big when it's Bears week, and I am really looking forward to taking on the Bears. And for a change, it seems like we're going to play the Bears at the right time.
Yeah, and you never know. The NFL is it's such a week-to-week league, and the big thing is the Packers, obviously, their last game was a home loss against the Detroit Lions, where they really played a good game. They just couldn't finish on offense. They had the right approach to it. Their drives were pretty good. They just couldn't finish very often. And a big thing, though, coming out of the bye week then after that, is that the Packers, they don't have Preston Smith anymore. He's now with the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously traded right at the NFL trade deadline for a seventh-round pick in next year's draft. And the big question, Gil, that everyone wants to get in on is, how do the Packers replace Preston Smith?
Yeah, and it's I think this is like a multi-part answer. I don't think you just say, okay, this one guy steps in and gets the job done. I mean, I would start with, we need more from Rashawn Gary. How about him having a stronger second half than the disappointing first half that he had, only 2.5 sacks? And then I think the guy who steps into the starting spot that Preston Smith had initially, the first guy up is probably going to be Lucas Van Ness, and we'll see whether or not he can step in and do something, because he's been a bit of a disappointment this year as well.
Yeah, and other guys, obviously, you can't count out Kingsley Enagbare, who's shown some really good things time and time again. Brenton Cox Jr., are we going to rip the red shirt off of him? Is he finally going to get some snaps at the NFL level? We've seen him in the preseason play some good football in preseason action for the Packers. He's been on the roster now for a year and a half. We haven't seen him play at all. Aaron Mosby, he got in a little bit in that Lions game. He got a half a sack in that Lions game. Obviously, it helped that Penei Sewell kind of tripped over his right guard's foot on the play, but still, he made a play. He made it happen. Lucas Van Ness, though, that's the guy that you got to circle on being able to produce opposite of Rashawn Gary. You got to have a threat on both ends at a 4-3. Your defensive ends are so important in this scheme. And Lucas Van Ness is a guy who was drafted in the first round. The Packers moved up in the draft as a result of the Aaron Rodgers trade to make sure that they got Lucas Van Ness. He was a guy that they clearly targeted in the draft. Now he's got to really make something happen. And his rookie year, he showed some good flashes. Now it's just a matter of, hey, can he build off of that? He hasn't really been able to do that this year, but this is the prime opportunity where he may get a legitimate shot.
Yeah, this is his time to shine. And, he could really put his stamp on locking down that starting spot and declaring that, hey, I have arrived, if he could have a solid second half of this season. And, look, the original goal was to bring him along slowly. He was behind Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary on the depth chart. here was a guy who, if he starts this Sunday, this will be the first game he has started since high school.
Yeah.
Because he didn't start any games at Iowa. Now there's sort of a technicality with that. And he's yet to start a game with the Packers. That's a really crazy stat, especially for a first-round pick. But it is time. We've seen flashes from Lucas Van Ness. It's time to see some production from Lucas Van Ness.
It's funny. You don't really look at that as a defensive end, where if you're a quarterback and you get drafted the first round, like Anthony Richardson, the Indianapolis Colts quarterback, he has started, 20 games since high school in his entire football career. But Lucas Van Ness doesn't get the attention like a quarterback does. And, that's just kind of the way it goes. Yeah. But, Lucas Van Ness, obviously, if he stayed his final year at Iowa, he would have been a starter there. That's just, they rotate guys quite often. That's just the way they've always done business there. But I feel like the Packers are placing Preston Smith. This is a two-parter question where there's an open roster spot. How do the Packers replace Preston Smith's roster spot? Marshawn Lloyd, we're going to talk about him a little bit. He's been practicing this week, and Brian Gutekunst made it sound like a couple weeks ago that he's getting closer to returning to the field. He's only had a few touches this year. He's dealt with a lot of injury issues dating back all the way to August training camp. Maybe they wait for Luke Musgrave to come off IR. So how do you replace the 53rd roster spot? Because that's another part of this equation too.
Yeah, I think we're going to see Lloyd. Whether it's in time for this Sunday's game remains to be seen. But both the GM and the coaching staff were so high on what his ability was. The fact that his running style is different from Josh Jacobs and any of the other running backs on this roster. So I think we will see Lloyd. Musgrave, I think, is still a little bit further away from being ready to play. So I don't think they'll hold a roster spot. But, to me, if they do go with Lloyd, do you keep 4 running backs on the active roster? And if you don't, who do you try to sneak onto the practice squad?
Packers head coach Matt LaFleur said this week, 4 running backs is definitely an option. And that's a good problem to have, 4 capable running backs. And let's just go right into the Packers injury report right now. Now, coming out of the bye week, some very positive news. Pretty much everybody's practicing in some kind of capacity, including Jordan Love, who has been a full participant this week, which is a critical factor for the Green Bay Packers if they really want to progress and move forward and get better throughout the season. Defensive tackle Colby Wooden dealing with a shoulder issue. He's the only one that hasn't practiced this week for the Packers. And then we mentioned Marshawn Lloyd dealing with an ankle and a hamstring. The hamstring issue was something that was lingering in training camp. He's practicing this week. Not clear if he's going to be returning on Sunday. Most likely, I would think he's not going to play on Sunday, but you got to think the designated return window is going to open up. But overall positive injury news to the Packers, a team that didn't have Jair Alexander, Evan Williams, or Josh Myers in that game against the Detroit Lions, and they've all been practicing in some capacity this week too.
Which is very encouraging. And I gotta give some credit where credit is due. And it's going to be rare that you hear me saying nice things about a Buckeye. But I think there is very little doubt that the Packers missed Josh Myers in that game against Detroit. Now, the bad weather had something to do with it, I'm sure. Yeah. But Elton Jenkins struggled at times snapping the ball. And you sort of take it for granted until it's not there. So, I think they missed Josh Myers, and it'll be great to have him back in the lineup, even if he does struggle blocking sometimes after the ball is snapped. At least he snaps the ball well.
I do feel like Josh Myers has been better this year. I think he's just been a little better, but he's just been a steady force and just a steady player. His teammates clearly love him. His quarterback loves him too. He's obviously an important presence, it seems like, in that locker room and on the field too, in the huddle and everything, where it's going to be nice, I think, to have him back, assuming he does play this weekend. But speaking of the Green Bay offense, though, let's talk about the matchups between the Green Bay offense and the Chicago defense going into this weekend. Green Bay's offense ranked 3rd overall in total offense this year. Chicago's defense, 13th overall. The Packer offense, they're averaging just over 25.5 points per game. That's 9th in the league. Their passing attack is 7th overall in the league. And the rushing attack, 154.8 rush yards per game. That's 3rd in the league. Chicago's defense, their passing defense, well, it's been pretty good this year. They're allowing just over 190 passing yards per game. That's 7th in the NFL. 18.5 points per game. That's 7th in the league. But the rushing defense for the Chicago Bears, that's where there's some weakness there. 133 rushing yards per game they're allowing. That's 24th overall in the NFL. Gil, between Packers offense and the Chicago defense, Bears defense that has definitely been a big reason they've won 4 games and kept them in many games too. What's the matchup we should be really keying on in this game on Sunday?
For me, the linchpin matchup here is Josh Jacobs being able to run the football. And so by extension, it's the Packers offensive line against the Bears front 7. And, if Jacobs can successfully run the ball, and we're talking about a Bears defensive front that has struggled to stop the run, that makes Jordan Love's life so much easier. It gives you a better chance to minimize the pass rush, to keep the chains going, to come up in second and third and manageable. I just think it has a ripple effect throughout the entire offense. And I am looking forward to seeing what Josh Jacobs could do, because I think he'll have a big game against the Bears.
Josh Jacobs right now is the 4th leading rusher in the NFL. And even though you may see some notifications on your phone that say, oh, he's been below average and not what the Packers are expecting, that's a load of crap. He's been pretty good. And like last week during our bye week awards, we gave him the offensive MVP award for a reason. That guy is so critical. And now with Jordan Love being a full participant in practice right now, seems like his injuries are he's in a much better spot health-wise, where you can maybe run a little more play action and Love under center, which could be huge, where if you're presenting similar looks from under center and shotgun, wherever it may be, you're going to keep a defense on their toes. And I think that's just going to work wonders for the Green Bay Packers offense. And you get Josh Jacobs running the ball, you're going to open up that passing game as well. And the big thing also that I'm looking forward to as well is that Packers pass protection unit versus the Bears pass rush. Like we were just talking about, where the Bears passing defense, they're the 7th ranked passing defense in football right now. The Bears overall as a team have 24 sacks this year. That's tied for 14th in the NFL. Green Bay's offensive line has only allowed 12 sacks this season. That's the fewest in the NFL. It's been a very steady pass protection unit, but Chicago's defense, if you can hold off their pass rush, you hold off guys like Gervon Dexter and Montez Sweat, who was a big acquisition from Washington last year at the trade deadline for the Bears, signed a lucrative extension shortly after that. And you can really open things up in the passing attack. Just try to keep that Bears defense off balance and just on their heels, essentially, because that could work wonders for the Packers offense.
It really can. And, it's interesting because when you break it all down, Dexter is coming from the interior. He's a defensive tackle. That means it's going to be on, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, and, Sean Ryan to kind of neutralize him while Montez Sweat is coming off the edge. I really expect either Zach Tom or Rasheed Walker, depending on which side Sweat lines up on. That is going to be a great matchup to watch. But I'm more concerned about Dexter coming in the middle, because the interior of the Packers offensive line gives me a little bit more cause for concern than the tackles.
Yeah, just run the ball. You got to stick with the run. And the Packers, you're talking about a rushing attack that is averaging 5 yards per carry this year. That's tied for 3rd in the NFL. Chicago's rushing defense, they're allowing opponents to rush for 4.8 yards per carry. That's tied for 5th worst in the league. Even though this Bears defense has been pretty good overall, that's where there's a weakness, and the Packers definitely have to attack that. And I was looking at this, Gil, too, where the Bears have 4 wins this year, and the 4 wins are not very impressive. They beat a Tennessee team that the Packers thumped, an Indianapolis Colts team that has been so hit or miss, an LA Rams team, which the Packers were able to hold on and beat, but an LA Rams team at the time that also didn't have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua playing with Matthew Stafford. And then they also beat a Carolina Panthers team with Andy Dalton at quarterback, and a Jaguars team that has struggled mightily this year and probably going to be having a new head coach next season, and the quarterback competition just hasn't been very good. So you wonder looking at the list of quarterbacks, I'm just going to read them off real quick, who the Bears have played this year. They played Will Levis, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Matthew Stafford without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, Andy Dalton, Trevor Lawrence, Jade Daniels, Kyler Murray, and Drake May. And on that list, I think I'd take Jordan Love over everybody except for maybe Matt Stafford when he's got Kupp and Nacua. So this is probably the toughest competition the Bears are going to face this year is the Packers offense.
Yeah, at least so far. And, I think this is, again, makes it tougher for the Bears, and it's a great opportunity for the Packers. But, they've got to take advantage of it. They have to. This is one of those rivalry games. You kind of throw a lot of this stuff out the window sometimes.
Yep. Oh, for sure. And let's switch the units real quick because it's two units that had a lot of high hopes and expectations. Well, one is playing pretty well in the Green Bay Packers defense. The other one, oh boy, it's just been spiraling out of control, and that's the Chicago Bears offense. Packers defense first, 12th overall in total defense this year. They're 11th in points per game allowed, 15th in passing yardage allowed per game, and 10th in rushing defense this year. While the Bears offense, they have been brutal. Gil, 30th overall in total offense. They're scoring just under 19.5 points per game. That's 24th in the league. Their passing attack is 30th in the league. The rushing attack, 6th overall in the NFL, which is something to hang their hat on, but it obviously hasn't been good enough. They fired their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, who was in his first year with the Bears as the O coordinator just last week after they only put up 3 points against the New England Patriots in Chicago. It's a struggling unit, but obviously this is a unit that clearly has something to prove and clearly wants to show what they're capable of. So it's just something kind of to beware of if you're the Packers. Don't come in here with a bunch of confidence because maybe they found something that they could work on that they could excel on going forward. But what's the matchup we should be looking forward to between the Bears offense and the Packers defense?
Yeah, to me, it is the Packers' ability to get pressure on the quarterback. That is a big thing. And if you've watched the Bears offensive line, number one, they're banged up. Some of them some of the injured guys may be able to play, but they will not be at 100% most likely. And the other thing is they really, really struggle with blitzes and stunts, trying to get them to pick up these things and make adjustments in the middle of a play. They struggle with that. Well, guess what? Jeff Hafley really excels at. It's right now creating different exotic blitz packages, whether it's Keyshawn Nixon blitzing as, off the corner, or you send Edrin Cooper or whoever it is, they find a way to create pressure. The front four hasn't done a great job of it consistently, but the blitz packages have worked, and I think these blitz packages will get home, and maybe, just maybe, Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness can get on track against this struggling offensive line of the Chicago Bears.
Now, Lucas Van Ness, I will point out, 2 of his 4 sacks last year as a rookie came against the Chicago Bears, and he's a guy he's got a lot of speed on that edge, and a guy who's going to, I think his job this weekend, Jeff Hafley's going to tell him, hey, you keep contained. You keep Caleb Williams inside, and you keep contained. He had that chase down block against the Bears last year in the opener, chasing down Justin Fields towards the sideline. Usually Fields beats most defensive ends going towards the sideline. He couldn't turn upfield because Lucas Van Ness is able to play that so well. His pursuit angles are really a big positive of his game as an edge rusher. So that's something to keep in mind. And then also, you talked about the struggles the Bears offensive line had last week. 9 sacks allowed against New England. They've allowed 38 sacks this year. That's second worst in the NFL, only to the Cleveland Browns, who have obviously had massive struggles this year, just all around in general. And if you're Jeff Hafley, if you are the Green Bay Packers, the game plan you had against the Houston Texans, do that. Use that and then add a little wrinkles and just add a little extra to it, because that was such a good game plan against a good quarterback like CJ Stroud, but against an offensive line that has struggled to pick up blitzes and stunts and be able to adjust in pass protection. You got to have a similar game plan like that against the Chicago Bears. You could have a big day up front if you're the Packers.
And they should, but will they? That's the big question, because to me, it's there for the taking. And, we need the defensive line to be better in the second half, obviously, than it was in the first half. This is an opportunity to set the tone right after the bye against a vulnerable opponent who's struggling. And it also helps. Look, I have very little doubt that Caleb Williams is a very talented quarterback who could have a very bright future.
Yep.
But let's face it, he is still a little slow at processing things as he adjusts to life in the NFL. It's not that he doesn't know how to do it. It's that he has to learn how to do it at the speed of the NFL game. You got to take advantage of that while you can.
It's a hard level to be able to adapt to the speed and everything. And let's talk about that. I want to mention Caleb Williams. Obviously, the number one pick in this past year's NFL draft, was a Heisman Trophy winner at USC. I'm looking forward to how Jeff Hafley has Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams play against a guy like Caleb Williams, where Caleb Williams this year, he's completing 60.5% of his passes. He's only throwing for about less than 200 yards per game, 9 touchdown passes this year. He's thrown 5 interceptions, 236 rushing yards. He likes to try to evade the pocket if possible. He likes to run around. He likes to scramble quite a bit. And I feel like Evan Williams, that is the ultimate chess piece to have if you're Jeff Hafley, where he has been so solid this year, and the defense has sputtered when he hasn't been in there the last couple of weeks. So they didn't play very well against Jacksonville after he left the game. The defense, they played okay against Detroit, but they clearly missed him. I mean, the guy is so critical and important. And Green Bay against dual threat quarterbacks this year, they have done a good job of keeping those quarterbacks in the pocket and trying to make those quarterbacks beat them with their arm. Jalen Hurts in the opener in Brazil. He threw for 278 yards, threw a couple touchdowns, also threw a couple interceptions. Only had 33 rushing yards, though, on 13 carries. Also had a couple fumbles and lost a fumble. Anthony Richardson in week 2 against the Colts, 17-34, 204 yards, threw 3 interceptions. Only had 37 rushing yards, but only 4 carries. Also had 2 fumbles. And then Kyler Murray, probably the Packers' most impressive game on the defensive side of the ball this year. Kyler Murray was held in the pocket, only 7 carries for 14 yards. His longest run was 5 yards. He also lost a fumble. You got to the way the Packers have designed the defense and structured the defense to go against dual threats like a Caleb Williams is very comforting to know as a Packer fan going into this game. And Evan Williams is a big part of it. And you know Xavier McKinney's just going to be keeping his eyes on Caleb Williams all day long too. He will bait
Caleb Williams, and I think he'll have at least one pick based on that, just because you have to think Williams is going to be told, do not throw in the area where Xavier McKinney is. Yeah. We'll see if he's able to avoid him, but I get the feeling that the X-Man will be adding to his interception total on Sunday.
Yeah, 6 interceptions in his first year with the Packers. That's tied for the NFL lead currently with Detroit's Kirby Joseph, who obviously could have a big day against the Bears coming up later in their schedule this year. But that's the safety battle, and Caleb Williams, that's definitely the matchup for me to watch. Now, just going through some quick stats and figures, some quick key stats. Turnover ratio this year, the Packers +6 overall turnover ratio. That's tied for 7th best in the league. The Bears, despite all their offensive struggles, but a good defense, they've done a good job of taking care of the football. +8 in turnover ratio this year. That's tied for 4th best in the league. Penalties. This is the bane of the Packers' existence when it comes to the offense. 67 penalties this year on offense for the Packers, tied for 9th most in the league. The defense, 55 total penalties, 5th fewest. Chicago's offense, well, they're not racking up a lot of penalties on the offense. 56 this year, that's tied for 10th fewest in the NFL. But on defense, 61 penalties. That's near the upper echelon, 14th most in the league. And then third down, the money down. Green Bay's offense hasn't been very good on third down lately. They're down to 37.4% on offense, 19th in the NFL. But the defense has been very good on third down for the most part. 33% this year on defense, 6th best in the league. Well, Chicago's offense, well, they haven't been any better when it comes to converting on third down. 28.7% on third down this year on offense, 2nd worst in the league. But the defense has been very good on third down for the Bears, 33.3%. That is 7th best in the NFL. So obviously, it just seems like third downs, it's going to come down to, again, where this is going to be so critical. If these numbers hold true, the Packers shouldn't have many issues on Sunday.
Hopefully. Yeah, and you would think that the Green Bay defense should be able to minimize the point total for the Chicago Bears.
And some quick Bears injury news real quick. Not practicing in some capacity this week includes safety Jaquan Brisker, offensive lineman Tevin Jenkins, defensive end Montez Sweat, and safety Tarvaris Moore, who was with the Packers in training camp last year, didn't suit up. So if you're doing those immaculate grids, you can't use him as a former Packer. It won't work. I'm just letting you know that's my kudos to you. And then limited participants this week include offensive tackles Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright, and defensive end Darrell Taylor for the Bears. So some injuries to monitor right there on the Bears front. The Packers pretty healthy coming out of their bye week. good timing for Green Bay overall when it comes to the health and injuries going into this game. Gil, why do the Packers win on Sunday?
Packers win if they don't turn the ball over, and if they win if they play to their capacity. If they play their game, if they just don't beat themselves, this is a game they should win.
I'm with you. If the Packers take care of the football, if they can have one game with Jordan Love starting as a quarterback where they don't turn the football over, it's going to be a good day for the Green Bay Packers. And also the Bears, if they play like a team that's completely checked out and completely just done with their head coach and the coaching staff in general, it's going to be a good day for the Green Bay Packers as well. Why do the Packers lose?
Here's my concern as far as why the Packers might lose. Chicago has a new offensive coordinator. They may just say, you know what, to heck with it. We're going to empty out the playbook. Mm-hmm. We're going to do whatever we want to do, and we're going to throw every trick play you could imagine at the Green Bay Packers. And if a couple of those trick plays work, the Packers could be a little bit off balance and give up some big plays, and that would be a concern.
That kind of plays into what I was going to say, where the Packers essentially, the Bears kind of go crazy. They have new life with a new old coordinator with Shane Waldron out, and now is it Thomas Brown who's in as the offensive coordinator and the new play caller in Chicago. And the Packers just, they don't play disciplined football. If they don't play disciplined football, you keep the Bears around long enough, and they may steal this one and get their first win against the Packers in more than 5 years. So just take care of the football, play disciplined football, and just do your job. Do your job, follow your rules, and you'll be okay. Gil, what's your prediction for Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Packers will win this game. I don't think it's going to be extremely high scoring. I don't think the Bears can put 20 points up on the Packers unless they score a defensive or special teams touchdown. I think the Packers win it 27-17.
Don't be like the Tennessee Titans in week 1 and have a punt block for a touchdown and throw a horrible pick 6. That's how the Bears beat the Titans in week 1. The Bears could easily be a 3-7 football team, or a 3-6 football team instead of a 4-5 football team right now because of that. But that's football. It happens. I'm with you, Gil, where I think the Bears score 17, but the Packers do win, and the Packers win 24-17. Look at that. We're only 3 points off. I swear I put my prediction in before yours. That was my prediction. I had typed in stone set in stone everything before you sent me those predictions earlier. So we both had the Packers win their 11th straight game. Hopefully that holds true. Gil, going into the big rivalry weekend, what articles you got cooking on Cheesehead TV and the Packers Post?
Well, for Cheesehead TV, I talked a little bit about the Marshawn Lloyd situation, where he would fit in and how he would do, and how the Packers adjust their game plan and their roster if and when hopefully he returns. So I addressed that a little bit. And I talked a little bit on the Packers Post about Lucas Van Ness and what he'll be facing and how important his contributions will be in the second half of the season.
I like the Packers running back room a lot more than I did going into the year. I like them a lot more than I did. And I think Marshawn Lloyd could still bring something different to this offense. So I just want that guy to get healthy because I really want to see what kind of explosion he could bring out of the backfield with the Green Bay offense. You ready for some trivia?
I am ready for some trivia.
All right. Well, the Bears and Packers rivalry, it's the oldest rivalry in pro football, but it's been pretty one-sided lately. The Packers haven't lost to the Bears since 2018. The Bears, they've had a rotating circus and clown car of new coaches and quarterbacks for the last couple of decades, while the Packers, they've been steady, especially at the quarterback spot. In the last 50 games, 5 quarterbacks, Gil, have thrown touchdown passes for the Packers against the Bears. Gil, name the last 5 Green Bay QBs to throw a TD pass against the Chicago Bears.
Okay, well, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, that would be the easy 2. Last
50 games. Remember, we're talking 25 years.
All right, Brett Hundley has to be up there.
He is.
And Brett Favre has to be up there.
He is. Yep, that's 4.
That's 4. Matt Flynn.
Good guess, but not Matt Flynn. I had to dig deep into the archives. It was Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Hundley, Brett Favre, and Craig Nall. Craig Nall, that guy was a preseason legend. I love that guy.
Right.
But Brett Hundley, he threw a touchdown pass to Devontae Adams in Week 10 of the 2017 season when Hundley was starting for Rodgers while Rodgers was recovering from a broken collarbone that year.
Yep.
Helped lead Green Bay to a 23-16 win over the Bears at Chicago. And then Nall threw a touchdown pass against the Bears in January 2005. He finished the game completing 7 of 13 passes for 131 yards and a touchdown pass in the Packers' 31-14 win over the Bears. Now, Gil, I got some bonus trivia for you.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Name the 6th Packer player in the last 50 games to throw a TD pass against the Bears. So, not including all quarterbacks, the 6th Packer player in the last 50 games to throw a touchdown pass against the Bears.
Oh, wow.
It was definitely a trick. It was definitely a trick play. Obviously, that goes without saying.
Obviously, it's a trick play, and I'm just trying to imagine which running back or wide receiver pulled the trigger on
I will give you a hint. He is the guy who I would say was the MVP of the 2010 NFC Championship game when the Packers beat the Bears at Chicago to go to the Super Bowl.
B.J. Raji.
No. And it's not your typical answer you'd say for an MVP in that game, but he essentially, and I'll explain why after I reveal who it was.
Okay. Gosh.
Special teams.
Okay, special teams. I am going to go Tim Mastay.
Nailed it. Punter, Tim Mastay. His touchdown pass came on a fake field goal attempt against the Bears in the Packers' Week 2 win over the Bears in September of 2012. He had a quick shovel pass to Tom Crabtree. Crabtree then went the distance for a 27-yard score to open the scoring in that game for the Packers. And Gil, the reason I say he was the MVP of that 2010 NFC Championship game is because he kept Devin Hester out of it. His punts on that cold, frigid day in Chicago between the oldest rivalry in NFL history, and Tim Mastay took their Hall of Fame All-Pro punt returner completely out of that game. He was magnificent. I don't think Hester had a return longer than 7 yards on punts that game, and he was legit their only hope for offense for the Chicago Bears on that Sunday, on that championship Sunday. So Tim Mastay was my MVP. I forever love that guy because of what he was able to do to get the Packers to the Super Bowl that year.
Are you telling me you had no faith in Caleb Haney?
He showed some flashes, but he also threw a pick six to B.J. Raji. So
he did.
That's all I'm saying. But hey, Packers Bears, it's rivalry week, it's Bears week. We obviously really want this one. Keep it going. Keep the win streak going for the Packers. The 6-3 Packers against the 4-5 Chicago Bears. Packers looking to get back on the winning track, extend their win streak against the Bears to 11. Chicago looking to avoid their 4th straight loss. Kickoff from Soldier Field in the Windy City, scheduled for noon on Sunday. Packers, they got a tough schedule coming up after this one. They need to take care of business on Sunday and move forward.
Yeah, and look, they need a division win. They're 0-2 in the division. You cannot afford to drop another division game.
I agree. Let's get that dub. Let's get that dub.
Yeah, let's get it, and let's do our thing because this team needs to get back on track. All right, well, that is going to do it for us today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at @GilPackers and at GBPackerSean to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackersean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. A big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. Thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.